I watched two videos from Sarge over the weekend, and those two videos were absolutely fantastic. For me, those are the best videos he's ever made. The videos were called something like Why They Don't Get It or Why They Don't Understand. I'm going to be making several videos just based on the stuff that was said in that video, but for now what I want to talk about is black people being so emotional. Black people thrive on appeals to the emotion and pulling on heartstrings. And what I mean is, why is it after 40 or 50 some odd years after the civil rights movement, why do black people still depend on marching as their number one form of getting something done? Marching was fine back in the 60s and the 70s when we didn't have any power, no rights, and the laws were against us. That's all we had was marching. But in today's society, marching is bullshit. Marching is for people who don't have any power. Marching is not for people who have been citizens for 50 years. And what I mean by that is, let's take the gays for example. Now, gays are citizens, but this out and proud and I'm gay and I'm gonna flaunt it everywhere attitude has only been around since like the late 90s? It may have started a bit earlier than that, but it's really recent. And there are still laws on the books today prohibiting some homosexual activities. That includes marriage, and I think there's even some sodomy laws still on the books in some states. Even though gay couples tend to have higher income households than straight couples, part of that is due to the fact that they tend not to have kids, and that gives them more buying power and more disposable income. So they have a tremendous amount of buying power. But the thing is, when it comes to changing laws, you cannot buy that type of change. In order for the gay agenda to get out there, for them to get laws changed so they can do what it is they want to do, they have to pull on the heartstrings of people, try to get them to feel sorry for, oh, I just love this person, why can't I marry them, stuff like that, because that's all they got. Again, they got a lot of money, but they cannot buy a politician, or they can't buy the election to change the laws to what they want them to be. So they have to depend on pulling on heartstrings and appeal to emotion to get people to change their mind so that they will in turn vote in their favor. Here's another example, illegal immigrants. Here we have a large group of people with a lot of buying power. Make no mistake about it, I'm not saying they're rich, but they got a lot of buying power. Why do you think companies spend the money to make ads in Spanish instead of just making them in English? It's because even though these people are illegal, the companies recognize that they do still have a lot of buying power. And again, that buying power may get everyone else in the country to have to press 1 for English, but when it comes to actually changing laws, they have no power. They're not even legal, so it's not like they can vote in an election to change things their way. So that again, they have to depend on pulling on heartstrings and appeals to the emotion. They'll depend on these sob stories like, oh, my brother came over here illegal to be with his family. You're going to split up his family and send him back to Mexico? They have to use emotional stuff like that because they don't have any power. Now, I know what you're thinking. You heard me first time. Black people don't have any power. Bullshit. We are still, for now, a big enough chunk of the population to have financial impact. Now that is slipping away from us every day as more and more people come into this country who aren't black. But for now, 12% of the population ain't too shabby. If Asians can be 4% of the population and they got buying power, you better damn well believe we got buying power. But instead of using that buying power, black people act like folks who don't have any power at all and people who don't have any rights. They act like people who still have laws against them. See, there are laws against gay marriage. There are laws against illegal people being in this country and getting jobs and stuff. I mean, nobody enforces them or anything, but there's at least laws against them. There are no laws against black people. If anything, there are laws for black people, in support of black people, like affirmative action. And even though that applies to other minorities as well, it was put in place for black people. If you want to go to school, if you want to open a business, there are resources out there if you're diligent enough to look for them. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but if you are determined, you can use the system to your advantage, which is what other groups of people do. This whining to get stuff will only get you scraps. A beggar on the street that you see with a cup, people only walk by and put a few cents in there. Maybe you get $1 every now and again, maybe even $20, but nobody's going to give them a house. Nobody's going to give them a car. Nobody's going to say, here, let me feed you for the next year. If you're at the table eating your dinner and your dog comes up and starts looking at you with those big, pitiful eyes, do you give him your whole plate? No. You give him a little scrap of something, if that. The days of black people pulling on heartstrings to get what they want, those days are numbered. Alright, here's another example of black people using emotion when it shouldn't be used. I'm talking about black people flying off the handle when somebody insults them racially, whether it's calling them a nigger or hanging a noose. Okay, let's talk about Jenna 6. Now, from what I hear, the story didn't go down the way it was portrayed in the media. Like, it's not like they hung the noose one day and the next day they kicked that guy's ass. Apparently some other stuff happened and somebody talked about somebody's mama and whatever. But the point is, whatever made them decide to kick that boy's ass wasn't because he had hit them first. It was over some emotional bullshit. Someone calling you a nigger does not justify you to hit them. Someone hanging a noose does not give you license to beat them down. That is emotional bullcrap that accomplishes nothing but gets you a rap sheet. What you should do, especially if somebody calls you a nigger at work or at school or any kind of governmental facility, snap a picture of the noose and file a lawsuit. You will be sitting on millions instead of sitting in a jail cell fighting the charges. You'll end up in court using an emotional reason for your defense. He called me a nigger, so I had to hit him. You know the significance of that word to my people. Instead of using emotion to get $1 million check, you'll be using your emotion to try to pull on the heartstrings of the judge and the jury so they won't put you in jail for assault. You want to be emotional in court? I'll tell you when to be emotional in court. When somebody calls you a nigger at work and you got proof of it, or they hang a noose and you snap that picture of it and you file your lawsuit, you get on the stand and tell them, I was emotionally disturbed by seeing that noose up at work and I don't even feel safe there. I can't go back, I can't sleep at night, I can't eat. That's when you get emotional. And then you can walk out of the courtroom with $1 million check. That's when to be emotional in court. Until then, be logical. People don't care about your emotional sob stories, but they care when you're taking their money. Here's one more misuse of emotion by black people. And this was partly covered in Sergeant Willie Pete's video. Perfect example, even though it's fictional, but it's based on real life. The movie Do the Right Thing. There was a scene where one of the characters, I think his name was Bugging Out, he got a slice of pizza that didn't have much cheese on it, so he went back up to the counter and asked the shop owner to put some more cheese on it. And of course the guy said, no, extra cheese is $2. So anyway, Bugging Out bitches and moans and makes a big scene, but at the end of the day, he doesn't get his extra cheese. Well, he does take the shaker of Parmesan cheese and shake extra cheese on there, but he didn't get the cheese that he wanted. And instead of saying, well, you know what, that's alright, if you're not going to put adequate cheese on the pizza, I'm not going to spend my money here, and neither are my boys. He yells at the guy and sprinkles the Parmesan on his pizza, and he comes back another day and spends more money with this guy who refuses to put enough cheese on the pizza. That's the first scenario. The next scenario is that Sal's Pizzeria had a bunch of Italians on the wall, and one guy in the movie asked him to put some black people up on the wall. Now, first of all, that right there is emotional bullshit to begin with. It's an Italian restaurant. It makes sense to have Italians on the wall. All these little fake victories that black people have, like, so what? If you put some black people up on the wall, then what? Does that clean up the neighborhood? Does that get black people more money? No, it's just some pictures up on a wall. Who gives a shit? But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The point is, at first this guy has this big display of misplaced emotion, saying, get some brothers up on the wall, get some brothers up on the wall. That part right there, the yelling, the emotion, that is useless. That's like marching. The thing that would have gotten them the change that they wanted is boycotting like the guy suggested. If people can still get your money, they'll put up with your mouth and your emotion and your bitching, and they'll throw you little scraps here and there, but they won't really change. If you want to change things, you gotta hit people where it hurts, in the wallet, not in the face. Physical scars usually go away in a few days, maybe a few weeks, but if you get messed up financially, it can take years to get back on track. Now, remember the illegal immigrants and the gays that I talked about back at the beginning of the video? I'm going to give two examples of those two groups trying to flex their financial muscles, but it just didn't work because, again, at the end of the day, they need laws to change to get their way. The first example happened 2 or 3 years ago, which was A Day Without Immigrants, where the illegals stayed home from work to prove that they are a necessary part of the economy. Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you look at it, it's kind of hard to show that with a one-day boycott. One-day boycotts are a joke, so I don't think that really accomplished as much as they hoped it would have. And I saw another story in the news where I think some local merchants were protesting some kind of gay event and they didn't want it in their town or something like that. But anyway, what the gays did is they went to the bank and got a whole bunch of unique money pieces that you don't see every day. I think they were $2 bills. So they went into the area that had refused whatever they were trying to do, and they spent money using those $2 bills so that the merchants would know that when they got a $2 bill, that was gay money. And this is the money they would be missing out on if they weren't there. Now, while both of those groups still have not accomplished their ultimate goal, and that's because, again, they need laws to change, at least they are attempting to use other methods of persuasion, which is money. Black people very rarely use their money power to change things. And yes, we do have money. Yes, we do. We just spend it in the wrong places, on the wrong things. But anyway, enough with the emotion already. Nobody cares. Imus didn't give a damn about what he said until he got fired. And not that I agree that he should have been fired. That's a fight that black people shouldn't even taken up in the first place. That was just more emotional bullshit. But anyway, protesting isn't what made him sorry. He got sorry because he lost his job. Shock jocks thrive on ruffling people's feathers, so you showing that your feathers are ruffled don't do any good. A whole bunch of people marching outside of his job is ammo for his arsenal. That's bringing more media attention to him and basically giving him free publicity. People who weren't listening to him before might start tuning in now because of all this hoopla around him. So sometimes marching and protesting is even counterproductive. And what about the Dixie Chicks? When did they get sorry? When people start throwing their CDs in the garbage can. They were proud of what they said until people start throwing their CDs away. Money talks. Nobody cares about your emotional outbursts and your whining and bitching. They'll throw you a few scraps, but they're not really going to change anything for you.